what's going on with my mom or dad is just not working anymore. More than half of my clients come to me because some form of dementia or cognitive impairment is what's causing the pain point that they can't solve on their own. Isolation is one of the contributing factors to the development of dementia. Many times, people contact me when they've reached the end of their own capacity. It's such a gift, really, to be brought in at sometimes the most stressful time for not only somebody who's experiencing challenges of aging, but also the adult children who are experiencing being adult children for the first time.
Welcome to Connecting is Caring podcast of New Way Home Care. What we do is we connect the stories in the community. We connect the useful resources in the community, the real gems in the community. And I have one such a wonderful gem in the South Bay community here with me today. Jill Lau. Jill is a care manager serving all of the South Bay. I'll let you expand on your territory. Welcome, Jill, to our podcast, and thank you for being on our podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be here.
Jill, I would love to learn a little bit about your life before you became a care manager, your life in South Bay. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I am a transplant to Southern California. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, but I came down here to California for college, and I met my husband here. So we got married and decided to stay.
Which college did you go to?
I went to Pepperdine.
Pepperdine.
In Malibu.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Many new grads can't stay in Malibu. So we moved to the Valley, but eventually to Playa del Rey. And then when it was time to buy a home, we decided on Redondo Beach. So
That's beautiful.
we've been in Redondo since 2008. And in terms of a little bit about my background before becoming a care manager, I kind of fell into my first few jobs out of college. And through connections, I got the opportunity to become a legal assistant and eventually to become the director of customer service for a financial services prepaid MasterCard program.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting. I loved being part of a startup company, but my heart wasn't fully in it. And so about a year into that startup, I got laid off just as I had started business school.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, this is terrible timing. I'm in business school and I have no job. But it actually was great timing because I had a chance to really think about what do I want to do and what do I want to be when I grow up, even though I was already grown up in grad school. But I realized that my love that I had back in high school of the healthcare industry had never really gone away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still interested in helping people in the healthcare field, but maybe in a different way instead of becoming a doctor like I had originally thought of. And so after doing a lot of research, I thought senior housing might be it for me.
Senior housing. Okay.
Yeah, that was my first interest.
Wow.
And so in 2008, right during the recession, I got a job doing sales and marketing for a wonderful nonprofit continuing care retirement community. And I worked there for 5 years. And I loved working with families and older adults who realized, okay, something might need to change, but I'm not quite sure what to do about it. And maybe moving to a retirement community is the right answer. And I loved working with families to help them really evaluate their different parameters and preferences, their budget, and all of that to see if our community was the right fit for them. And many times it wasn't, and sometimes it was. But learning that whole process of working with older adults just confirmed for me that I am working with the right people, but maybe this specific career path isn't exactly what I envisioned it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so after 5 years, I became an RCFE administrator, meaning I could have the
You used to have the
option.
license?
I do still have that certificate, so I can run a retirement community if I wanted to. But I realized that that would be a lot of bosses. And at the time, I also wanted to start a family, and I was commuting from Redondo Beach to Pasadena and back. You don't know anything about a commute like that, right? But I thought,
I just do that every day.
Exactly. It's a lot of time to think, that's for sure.
I know.
And so I realized I do still want to work with older adults, but maybe in a different capacity. And that's when I started to think about care management.
So the community you were working with,
Mhm.
that was in Pasadena?
Yes.
Which one?
It was, or it is, Villa Gardens.
Villa Gardens.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
It's a really wonderful one. And I loved how much I learned there and the people people who were there. And I got a great introduction about independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, that whole thing. And I also got a really good understanding that most people want to stay at home and they want to age in place at home. And so that was one of the reasons why my former business partner and I decided to get our master's in gerontology to understand aging and aging services and the challenges of aging a little bit more in depth, because we had real life anecdotal experience, but wanted to get a little bit more context for that senior care landscape. And that's what inspired us to go out on our own and start Peters and Love back in 2012.
And Peters, is she still part of the business, or she has moved away? Or
So Leslie Peters was my business partner. She was also my coworker at Villa Gardens at the time. And we both had this epiphany that we really wanted to be neutral advocates for older adults and not have any one specific solution that we wanted to be promoting, but really to listen to the families, listen to the older adults, and find out what they wanted. After a couple of years of doing Peters and Love, she realized that she wanted to go back to her first love of teaching yoga to older adults. And so we are still the dearest of friends, and she's such a big cheerleader of Peters and Love, but she's not involved in the day-to-day operations anymore.
So how long you had this care management business, right?
So we started in 2012. So that's been, what is that?
14 years.
14 years now, which is crazy to me. At first, we specifically were not going to do care management. We were focusing on short-term consulting for families who needed some guidance.
So it kind of evolved.
Yeah, exactly. And over time, we realized, these clients that we thought were going to be short-term clients kept coming back with more and more questions. And so it just eventually evolved into care management overall.
Wonderful. And along the way, you started doing some research on Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia.
Yes.
I had to admit, I have met with a lot of care managers and worked with a lot of care managers, but I haven't worked with a care manager who also does medical research on something they see in their patients every day, clients every day. So I'd love for you to talk more about that.
Sure. Well, it circles back to Pepperdine University, actually. One of my dearest friends and former roommates is a neuroscience researcher and professor at Arizona State University.
Okay.
And she and I have kept in touch over the years about our career paths and journeys. And she started focusing in on Alzheimer's research in particular. And of course, knowing what I do, she would tell me a little bit about what she was doing. She would ask me questions about what is this like in the real world, working with older adults who are impacted by a diagnosis or maybe a lack thereof of a diagnosis. And in her lab, she developed a very simple test using household items that would correlate with the atrophy of the hippocampus in the brain, which is related to memory. It correlates with the buildup of amyloid plaques, which is a biomarker for Alzheimer's disease in particular. And it also was predictive of functional decline. And she asked me, do you think that there's any real world use for this beyond my lab and doing research academically for this? And I said, absolutely. Because more than half of my clients come to me because some form of dementia or cognitive impairment is what's causing the pain point that they can't solve on their own. And with dementia, it can take many forms, but Alzheimer's disease is the most prominent reason for dementia, which is really a set of symptoms of functional decline caused by cognitive decline. And so my friend invited me to partner with her to start a business to really see if we could commercialize this lab test that she created. And so a few years ago, we created a business, and then we were able to apply for and receive a grant from the National Institute on Aging to pursue this as not a diagnostic tool, but something to nudge people towards seeking a diagnosis.
Okay. And now, if somebody wants to actually do this diagnosis, can they do it, and how do they find out about that?
So our tool is still in development. We were able to finish our grant through the NIA. We are still fine-tuning some of those products, but what I've realized is that there are different types of screening tools that are available to people, and the vast majority of them are meant to be done in clinic with a physician. And they're often cognitive screening tools like the Mini Mental State Exam or the Montreal Cognitive Assessment impairment, the MoCA or MMSE, or maybe like a 3-word recall. But a lot of physicians, they're primary care physicians, and they don't even really know how to distinguish between normal aging and cognitive impairment and dementia. And so there's a lot of tools that physicians need, but also individuals, especially if they've been impacted by dementia, they want to test on their own and find out. So we're trying to figure out now, do we go directly to individuals to help them pursue maybe identifying higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, or do we help the physicians with more tools to do that? That's where we are right
So
now.
when you do the assessment for your client, for
Mhm.
your care management services and things like that, do you use this tool?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, we use some of the existing standardized tools,
Uh-huh.
but so much of it is actually just hearing from my clients or from the adult children a lot of these symptoms. By the time people come to me, it's pretty apparent that there's likely early or moderate or advanced dementia. And where I think in the field, we're seeing the greatest opportunity is catching people before there's a lot of this functional decline that really causes them to reach out for home care needs or for care management. And if we can keep people in a high functioning level prior to this long and slow decline, then we maximize quality of life for people. So that's one of my goals, is maybe to work myself out of a job or to at least help a lot of people stay in that level of great life function and quality of life, and then call on me when needed.
I mean, you bring so much in-depth knowledge about this space. I mean, when somebody, let's say a family is considering you as a care manager for their mom or dad, I mean, you bring so much additional understanding about dementia. I mean, in particularly more about the Alzheimer's and things like that. I mean, that's so useful.
It's so helpful. And the industry is changing so much. Even after attending many conferences specifically on Alzheimer's disease, I'm realizing how much I don't know. But I'm also in awe of all of the researchers and the brilliant minds who are working to cure Alzheimer's disease or prevent the development of Alzheimer's disease in people. And the people who have really been impacted personally by it, where they've now made it their professional mission to really help people not experience what they experienced in their own families with that. So better diagnostic tools, more medications to address decline or agitation, any of these things that we see day in and day out, really to help people have their families, their loved ones for as long as possible.
Wonderful. For an average Joe like me, help me walk in the shoes of a care manager. What do you do every day? Tell me about your life helping older adults in the journey of aging. What do you do?
Well, one of the favorite things about being a care manager is that every client situation is different, and therefore every day is different. I like that variety.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I were a little bit more of an expert every day than I am, but I like the surprises. That's what keeps it interesting and challenging for me to keep learning more. But really what I do is to work with older adults and their families, and it's very often an adult child who comes to me and finds me and says, what's going on with my mom or dad is just not working anymore. And so they're feeling the pain in one way or multiple ways, and they realize we need some help beyond what we can do just as a family. And so I get to come in, and I have the privilege of meeting the family and finding out what are the unmet needs and what are the different parameters that we're working with in terms of budget, lifestyle preferences, care needs, diagnoses, or a lack of diagnoses, so that we can better understand how to meet these unmet needs, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. And my goal is to help provide peace of mind for everyone and really looking at safety of my client, but also their well-being. And how can we make each day as good as it possibly can be? So for somebody who's chosen to age in place at home, that's bringing in all the right resources, but also making sure they're going out as much as possible and having engagement and activities, being physically, emotionally, mentally engaged, however possible, and spiritually as well. But then also,
Spiritually, that's
yes.
very important.
Oh, it's a huge part of our lives. And sometimes people's worlds shrink as they get older and they don't even realize it if they stop driving at night or they stop driving altogether or they're having physical or cognitive impairments that make them feel less comfortable because they're not who they were maybe 5 years ago. So finding ways to help them still maximize their quality of life while their needs progress, that's what I love to do. And then also bringing the family on board. Many times family members don't have the same knowledge and understanding or even set of experiences to evaluate how their loved ones are doing. So my job is, as a neutral third party, to separate the emotional part of caring for parents, looking at the logistics and helping them understand, here's what we can do, and here's why, just as a neutral third party, here's why I might be recommending this type of service or plan for care versus this.
Like you said, every client is different and every client experience is different. You probably have some hair splitting experience taking care of clients.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about one such experience?
Sure. Well, I would say that the pandemic was a really huge, impactful growing experience for me in general. Just having to all of a sudden evaluate all aspects of care through a very different lens of safety and protection for them. And in some ways, promoting isolation when that was the last thing that I wanted to do at times.
That is terrible during the pandemic.
Oh.
It was just going everything in the opposite direction.
Yes.
You're isolating them where they should not be isolated. I'm glad you spoke
Exactly.
about that.
Oh my goodness. And isolation is one of the contributing factors to the development of dementia. So it's really, how do we weigh these differing priorities to still maximize safety and well-being for our clients at the time? So that was really a stretching time period for me where aging in place at home was the number one priority for just about everyone because we were hearing in the news about outbreaks of COVID in facilities. And so I really got to get creative and collaborate with home care providers, with therapists, and find ways to provide engagement in new ways. But then also since then, we've been adding back in these more social environments and engagements and finding ways to help people maybe move to a more social environment in assisted living or memory care to better meet their needs. Sometimes that can be very challenging. And I just had one such situation this past week where it wasn't necessarily the idea of moving to an assisted living community that was the biggest challenge. I thought that was going to be the biggest challenge, but the biggest challenge ended up being the logistics of it because this brand new, beautiful furniture that we thought was going to be delivered didn't get delivered. And then 4 days later, it didn't get delivered again. And so on the spot, I had to make some changes to my client's order, and I had to hire movers to drive to Orange County to pick up furniture from a warehouse and deliver it and assemble it so that my client could move in the next day to her beautiful apartment and have her not really be aware of all of the stressful things that were happening because that was just going to exacerbate the challenge of
This is simply amazing because when you talk about care management and care manager, you don't really think about doing all the furniture purchases, the logistics involved in that and things like that. So you take a much bigger overall picture about what should be and how to make it happen. That's so important.
Yes, it really is. And I never want to step on the toes of family members or loved ones. If they are highly involved, my role is really just to support as much or as little as the families and the client needs. And sometimes family is out of state or there's estrangement or maybe it's an only child and it's just more than one person can really do. So then my job expands to help provide all of that extra support, especially locally, of helping to do the shopping, maybe try to get excited about a move in some small way of choosing beautiful furniture, things like that, or making sure, your dog, let's get them a new dog bed, or let's see where your new walk with your dog is going to be so that we're still maximizing quality of life, even if the physical environment is changing over time.
So tell me one fun part of what you do.
Oh, I think one of my favorite things is making years-long relationships with families and with my older adults and many times my relationship with the client's children
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
live far beyond my clients do.
That's so sweet.
And it's this collaboration and this teamwork that we built over years turns into friendship. And it's such a gift, really, to be brought in at sometimes the most stressful time for not only somebody who's experiencing challenges of aging, but also the adult children who are experiencing being adult children for the first time. How do we navigate this graciously and gracefully and with limited time? And so to be welcomed into the care team is such a privilege, and it's an honor that I don't take for granted.
I mean, as a home care agency provider, I have had adult children calling me from the parking lot after they had just discharged the mom, and then now they need the care and things like that. So things all happen too late.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is it the same with the care management that you experience, or are there families who reach out ahead of time, trying to plan things ahead of time and things like that? What's your experience?
Many times people contact me when they've reached the end of their own capacity. They try to do it either out of love or out of obligation or due to financial constraints. They're trying to do this for as long as possible, but at some point maybe they're white knuckling it and they realize I either don't have the time or the energy or the expertise to do this on
the
my
rope
own.
at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then somehow they find out about care management and about me, and I am able to help, hopefully as soon as possible, lower the stress level by saying, okay, I got you. I can help you with some of these things. You don't have to Google these at 2:00 in the morning. I have wonderful service providers and I know what we can be doing, or I know some options for us to consider. And so sometimes it is jumping in the middle of a crisis and helping with, hospital to home or whatever that might be. But then sometimes I get these gifts of older adults who realize I need to start planning ahead because I'm not going to be this healthy for very much longer. And so I want to be proactive and I want to be looking ahead to the future to take charge of my own retirement. And I need somebody to help me brainstorm and make sure that I'm thinking of all the things I need to be considering. And those are so much fun to work with the planners.
Talking about planning, so if someone wants to do it in the proper planned manner, how and when do they engage somebody like you, and where do they engage you?
Oh, that's a great question because I'm not sure if there's a one-size-fits-all answer for that, but many times it's adult children who are now aging themselves and realizing my parents didn't have a great experience in their last years of life, and I want to do something differently. So sometimes they have thought ahead and they've put together their own estate plan, their wills and trusts and power of attorneys, but they realize that only helps me with some parts, and I still have a lot of logistics that I need to be thinking about. So then that's when they start considering care management. And other people say, I'm not even really sure what I need to be doing. Can you help me so that I can make sure I'm doing all that I need to do? And then I tell them, ooh, one of the most important things is getting your legal ducks in a row. And then I can help you with some of these other things for, how about maybe a plan A, staying at home? That's almost everybody. How can we be considering whether your current home is the right home for the long term, or what kind of supports might you need based on current diagnoses, your budget, all of these different considerations. And that way they'll have peace of mind that they know, at least in general, what their future might look like, and they know whom to call if things change over time.
And which all areas do you cover? Which all cities do you cover in the services?
So I'm based in the South Bay. So especially when I have a lot of hands-on involvement with clients, like attending doctor appointments with them, doing home visits on a regular basis, being local is really such a privilege and a gift. So I can have a lot of touches throughout the month. But there are other clients where I don't need to see them as often, especially if they're those planners and they just really need some guidance and they need me to be a sounding board over time. So for those people, I don't need to be as geographically close, and I can go all over LA County, Orange County, or even statewide if needed. But really for that hands-on touch, it's really South Bay, Westside area.
South Bay, Westside area. And so if somebody were to contact you for your services, how do they find you? How do they reach out to you?
Sure. So my name is Jill Love, and I'm an aging life care manager, also known as a geriatric care manager. And my company is called Peters and Love. You can reach me on my website at petersandlove.com. My phone number is 310-405-0885, or you can send me an email at jill@petersandlove.com.
Thank you so much, Jill. I mean, you have been just wonderful. Like I said, not every care manager is involved in research and understanding about Alzheimer's and things like which you do, which is a significant advantage to what you do.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I have seen you in action. You do such an amazing job. And thank you for coming on our show. This is Connecting is Caring podcast of New Way Home Care. We offer services all over LA County, all the way up to Palm Springs for concierge level of care. Thank you, Jill, once again. Thank you for being on our show and being our guest.
Thank you so much. It was such a privilege.